So I'm thinking about this in relation to my experience with St. James. I began to wonder if there was simply something about that environment and that context which influenced my behaviour. Because that's the major finding of the Zimbardo prison study. I mean, he himself walked into the study when it was starting to get out of hand early on, with the guards really starting to ramp up how they were mistreating the prisoners. Zimbardo went, look, I need to go in and settle the situation down so the experiment can carry on. He walks in, and the guards will start treating him like a warden. Before he knows it, he's taken an inspection, they've shown him this, they've shown him that, they've said, oh, look what we're doing, are we doing well? And he's congratulated all of them, he's shaking their hands, and he walks out, and he's standing there and he goes, hang on, what just happened? And that's the point where he goes, it's time to call a day on this. Because there's something so powerful about that context and that situation that people just devolve into these roles. So it's a scary finding, and as I say, it has implications for all sorts of things. I mean, we saw this playing out in our very recent history in terms of the prisoner mistreatment in Iraq. It's exactly the same thing. People just, that context, suddenly people who are good people are engaging in this behaviour. Powerful stuff. So in the same way, I was wondering if my experience in Santiago de Compostela was a situation where I was simply, it was an overwhelming context and I was drawn into sort of behaving in a particular way. Did that environment just influence me in such an effect that I just, I did what people in that environment should do. Now the truth is, there are times when particular religious contexts have had that effect on me. Having visited a number of Pentecostal churches as a teenager, there were definitely occasions when what I experienced in that environment was far more about the things that were already going on in that space, as well as the expectations of the people in that environment. That's not always the case. I've had very real spiritual experience in those contexts as well, and I do believe many people do. But there is that thing of, if that's your culture and if that's the expectation, then suddenly that can create the behaviour. For me, the task of discerning positive spiritual experiences from more negative one actually all boils down to one important criterion. And for me, the valuable experiences that we want to name as spiritual experiences are the ones that are transformative. When I look at the lives of all those people we just mentioned, we can see that their experience of God was not something that they just enjoyed in isolation. They didn't have a spiritual experience that was just all about them or just for them. In each case, their experience led them into something much greater. And it was something that was shared and became transformative for other people right through history. Now the question that follows any religious experience, to my mind, should be that question of, well, so what? What is this all about? What is the point of this experience? Because to my mind, positive religious experience is an invitation to do something differently. That's why we call it revelation. Revelation is this idea, because it's a jargon word, people often miss, I think, the thrust of what revelation is. Revelation is to reveal something. So the idea is, if I have a pedestal with a vase and I have a sheet over the vase, the idea is you might have a sense that there's a vase under there, but you can't really see it. Revelation is the process of pulling the sheet off and, there you go, you can behold it all in its glory. That's what revelation, this Christian word, is about. It's not necessarily about seeing, perceiving something for the first time, but it is about seeing it fully and understanding it differently. Now, I don't want to put my experience at the end of that pilgrimage on the same footing as those great experiences of great church leaders from the past. But the question I have for myself is, what good has come out of that moment when I hugged the statue? Have I been transformed in some way, even if it's only a very small way? And more or less, I'm still asking that question. What I will say about it tonight was that on that particular morning I suddenly found myself immersed in a very deep part of the Christian cultural stream, a part I had not experienced before. The best I can put it is that that place was one where words failed to make sense of just what is happening. I have no doubt that something significant did happen in that experience, but it remains very difficult for me to put it into words. So I can talk about the outward expression. I find it very hard to talk about what happened internally. And no, I don't think that's a cop-out. I think there's actually part of our tradition that really steps into the mystery of God, and those things, language falls away, and we're not really able to express it adequately anymore. And that's where I find myself with that particular story. So, just to round everything off for tonight, last week Rod challenged us to think about the place of God in our city, a city where Christianity is only one faith among many. My answer boils down to what I have been just speaking about. The way forward is through sharing our religious experiences and discovering the experiences we have in common, not just with people of other faiths, but even with those people who describe themselves as having no faith. Because, dare I say it, if we start talking about the cultural stream as this broad thing which we are actually all a part of, if we start actually relaxing those ideas of what makes you Christian and what doesn't, we can start seeing that actually these transformative experiences come up through our culture and our experience in all sorts of ways. If we live more deeply into the experience of what we, in our tradition, name as God, and find ways of articulating that experiencing, acknowledging what I've just said about sometimes those experiences are very hard to articulate, what I think may happen is that we find some new understandings of shared humanity and a richer understanding of that abiding love which actually flows over us and into all aspects of our life and throughout our culture. The idea that Christianity is an unmoving monolith bulldozing its way through time is simply a myth. Lots of people have that idea of this unmoving, unchanging thing just standing fast throughout all time. Christianity is a river through time that has been shaped by other cultures, religions and social movements. That is our past and it is our future. Now that we know this, instead of pretending that we are unmoving or unchanging, we are able to be intentional about engaging with the diversity we have here in our very own city. We have a unique opportunity to discover new religious experiences by sharing them with others that could shape our future for the better. And that is all I have tonight.